Well, good morning, everybody. All right, I'm going to start you off with just an animation of lightning going on early this morning here as I'm putting this forecast video together. And as I kind of show you what's going on down here in the southern plains, where we do have some pretty nasty storms that are going through parts of Texas and Oklahoma into Arkansas, even some over in parts of eastern Tennessee. I'm going to just give you a quick rundown of what we're going to dig into today. All right, there's an issue that is really showing up because the pattern has lost momentum. That's been a theme for the last couple of weeks. We know that the total atmospheric momentum is low. We're going to see what that does, and it's really going to be a focus on how a pair of cutoff lows that are far south to the mean flow of the jet stream across the northern hemisphere, how they're going to move across the United States, producing a very, very frustrating forecast for many, especially those in the central and eastern United States. I'm going to then look at how this pattern evolves as we get out there into week 2, week 3, and week 4. That's going to get us almost all the way through the month of May, and we're going to dig into that. But then at the end, I want to revisit my analog years that we've been using, and I want to add another year that I've been thinking about. It's not a good match now, but I'm thinking it might be a good match for summer, and that's the year of 2021. So at the very end of this, we're going to contemplate that globally. I'll look at the seasonal globals again real quick, and I'm going to finish with some NDVI data globally as well. So that's where I'm taking you today. Okay, yesterday on satellite, this was quite impressive. Just take a look at the depth of the low moving over the Great Lakes. Just widespread cloud cover. On the backside, some open cell convection. And in between, we just had some deeper convection in these areas, right in through here. And the later we got into the day, the stronger those storms appeared down in parts of Texas. And we watched the storms I just showed you on lightning data blow up here in the panhandles and move their way again across parts of Texas and Oklahoma. Just a repeated area of getting hit by very large storms throughout this last 7 to 10 days. At the end of the animation, though, as the sun angles become more oblique as the sun is setting here, we can see some of the wildfire smoke in Mexico, which we looked at a couple of weeks ago, knowing that so much of Mexico is in another long stretch of very dry conditions. And I also notice here in the northwest some wildfires. I'm going to zoom in and have a look at those, because late in the day, you can see here, there we go, look at the wildfire smoke in Northern California, parts of north central Oregon. Same thing up here in Washington, just some of the wildfire smoke. Some of these I'm assuming are controlled burns. I just noticed them on satellite this morning, so I have not looked into them any more than that. But I was curious if the air quality is expected to continue to be compromised by these fires as we go into the day today. So just a look here at the high resolution rapid refresh model putting out its vertically integrated smoke forecast. So I think the fires that I'm most concerned about right now are those that are in Mexico, just knowing that there is still significant drought there that extends into the southern plains. That extends into the southwestern United States, not the southern plains. In fact, we'll show you the new Drought Monitor here in a few moments. And I don't think I want to surprise anybody by telling you that we've seen some big changes. But I just want to point out again later today, this is what the modeling is suggesting the air quality could look like in this area. All right, from there, about 5:15 this morning, this is our all hazards map. So there's the complex of storms I just mentioned. We have severe thunderstorm watches out for this area. Flood warnings are out for this area. To the north of it, though, you might notice there is a frost advisory in parts of northern Kansas and Nebraska. Same thing for this end of the Snake River Valley. And as we were looking at it, I just wanted to show you the frost risk map over the next 7 days. Now, again, there's nothing uncharacteristic about this. In the central and western Nebraska, the high plains of Colorado and Kansas it's common that we can get May frost events. Same thing for the upper Midwest here, up around the Lake Superior, just as an example. And there's not a whole lot that's surprising about where this is in the West, but we just have to understand that tomorrow morning, on Saturday morning, May 3rd, these temperatures here are going to be bottoming out in the mid-30s. A couple of places will easily just do cold air drainage. If the skies really just clear out, we could just watch these temperatures bottom out early in the morning. And again, that risky area is right in here, and it is just it's a frost advisory saying that watch out in low-lying areas. I just want to make that clear. Meanwhile, tomorrow morning's min temperature is very warm east, very warm west, but we're going to come back to these temperatures in just a few moments here. It's the precip I want to have a quick discussion about, because the last half of April, we saw repeated incredibly heavy rainfall events that started in Texas and Oklahoma and moved into parts of Arkansas and Missouri, this region right in through here. Now, at the beginning of April, all of that was here, right? We had this historic flooding. So we've had back-to-back kind of historic flooding setups starting in the Mid-South and then going to the Southern Plains, but it's mainly been concentrated in these areas. We can look at it just up close to kind of get a sense on this 14-day precip total map, and there are places in here that have had 10 to 12 inches of rain. And then it's amazing just to think, look at this, slide right into this area and 2 weeks of nothing. Just a fascinating way in which the atmosphere returns its moisture back to the surface. Now, looking at this statistically, we now have this broad stripe that begins in the Ohio River Valley, extends to the Red River Valley, where there are a whole lot of single digits, meaning that going back to 1893, this is going to be a top 5 wettest April on record in this area. And the places that you see the new number ones, that's the new wettest April on record. Then just a bit to the north of it, take a look at this region right in through here, parts of Colorado, Nebraska, not grabbed anything. Northern Illinois, parts of southern Wisconsin been drier. Same thing for parts of lower Michigan. Then along the mid-Atlantic, Florida been trapped underneath that big subtropical ridge. And much of the West has had a drier April despite that system we talked about that kind of kicked off another round of these storms earlier this week that came through, set up here, dove down, rode across the boundary. And that was the one that we paid close attention to at the beginning of the week. So that brings me to this. All winter long, what were we talking about? Did winter recover any soil moisture? Now, has spring done it? So this is the deep one. So this goes down to 100 centimeters. It's a percentile, so think of it as a rank, not as a percent. And what we can see are the contrast on the map is huge. So this whole region is extremely saturated, and that extends into pockets of the Northeast. And then just riding the periphery on either side of it, we've got these areas where drought has continued to kind of keep a grip. So we're not going to look back on this March and April time period as being a revival away from drought across the entirety of the country. It's been one where the atmosphere has really been, there's been large disparity across short distances of the way the water's been returned. And that's my biggest concern for summer, okay? My big concern for summer all along has not been widespread drought versus flood. It has been highly regional precipitation variability. And some of you are going, well, Eric, we have that every summer. But I think that this is a particular summer where that regional variability hits extremely productive ag regions. That is the main thought process in this. So another way to look at it, again, is in terms of percentages. I just want to point out that over the last 2 weeks, we have corridors in through here that have had more than 10 times the normal rainfall. But then we can easily find these drier pockets. And the east has been a big one simply because of the presence of that large subtropical ridge that's been in that area. So just take a look at the maps. I think they kind of tell us a pretty compelling story as we start to move into May. And as we're now in May, remember, May is the first month where we truly make the transition over to a more convective pattern versus having big, broad fronts that sweep through and create more widespread precipitation. So it gets us to our new Drought Monitor, which was released yesterday, and you can see it over there on the left. But I always like to look at side by side the Drought Monitor with the change map. And you can see some pretty significant change, right? But just take a look. And for example, in Missouri, up to a 3-class change in the Drought Monitor. But then in northern Missouri, we've gone drier. We lost a category. Same thing for parts of Nebraska. Parts of the Dakotas, South Dakota made a recovery this past month. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to click on that. There we go. And but there's still pockets in North Dakota back to Montana that are missing. And I don't think we've fully captured some of the issues here on this particular map, nor this one, of these pockets of dryness that continue to emerge East Coast, but mainly Mid-Atlantic down to the Southeast. Now, Florida, I believe they've got it. But other than that, I think we're kind of missing some of the regional drought pressures. And what's interesting about this map is that we weren't expecting, and we still aren't expecting, the Mid-Atlantic all the way down to the Southeast to be struggling for moisture through the remainder of summer. Now that could be completely flipped on my head in a heartbeat. I know it can, but I'm just kind of giving you the thought process right now. Okay, let's keep going through this. I did want to give you some stats just to make a point here. Last October, we saw the Drought Monitor jump up to about 80, almost 90% of the lower 48 in some form of drought. Okay, that's kind of what we're looking at here, D0 to D4. That was right there at that peak at the beginning of beginning of November. As we look at the latest data, we're now down to 56%. So, this is a 35% drop in total drought area. That's D0 to D4. And we've seen the reduction of our D1 to D4 down to 37%. So just thinking about that back in like February, I mean, that number was 43%. So we watched a drop in total drought area. But do you notice this? Again, talk about disparity. Look at the D3 to D4. That has actually been coming up. Oh, a terrible line. Can you see what I'm talking about right down here? That has been increasing over time, which means the spatial disparity in the rainfall has to be considered in all of these analyses. So I want to give you a couple of things on drought right away here at the beginning. The new seasonal drought outlook was released by NOAA yesterday. I completely buy into this. And a lot of folks are going, well, Eric, you've been talking about this plains drought issue. I know I have. My focus has mostly been central and northern plains, right? This summer problem is going to be, I think, north, not south. And we've kind of made an argument for why that could be. I kept showing like big ridges, we're going to have cascading storms over the top. It's going to come around, give us an active southwest monsoon. My worry has been about the placement of a ridge here, remember? Or maybe back into Montana, or maybe the Dakotas, or maybe into Minnesota. It's this northern issue. So when you see this and start to see drought remains but improves, or drought removal likely into this area, I mean, yeah, we just hit it hard with a bunch of heavy precip. And as you know, take a look at remember we looked at this carefully. That's the July to August into September precipitation anomaly forecast, right? So when you look at this, again, this is something about high pressure here, wet in the southeast, active southwest monsoon, but Texas, I mean, you've not been in the discussion on drought for summer for a while. Now, we watch big dust storms early, but those are common in February, March, and early April. But the reality is that, you start to see this here, and it's painting a picture that this whole evolution of a summer pattern could lead toward drier conditions, Western Corn Belt still. So I haven't got much material change in that narrative, and neither has the new analog year that I'm going to add. But this is my big question. Matt and I have been discussing this. Andrew and I have been discussing this all month long. And what we're talking about is this kind of repetitive business in the atmosphere of it losing momentum. And if there's a cadence to this, okay, this puts another momentum loss into June, and then another momentum loss later in July and August. And that those momentum losing timeframes in the atmosphere, where the total atmospheric motion compared to the spin of the Earth loses, we just get global ridging, bigger ridges that just kind of line up, around the northern hemisphere for in this particular example. So you go, what are you talking about? I'm talking about all these. Okay, you can kind of see just several of them across the northern hemisphere, and the jet stream's displaced. Okay, where is it? It's way up here. All right, so we're getting these cutoffs to the south, and these have been absolutely maddening to forecast. And you say, why? We love it. I love it when our troughs are connected to the jet stream flow. And I just drew the arrow where the jet stream is. When these cutoff lows become cut off from the flow, by their very definition, they meander. And they make it extremely difficult to predict precipitation. Long story short, when the atmosphere becomes so meridional like this, and you break off pieces like you're going to see today, see this ridge here with the cutoff low there? Those kind of features in the flow of the jet stream reduce predictability because of the speed and width and height of these troughs. And if you looked at yesterday's forecast versus today, they're entirely different. So here you go. Jet stream level winds, 0Z European model run. This is the operational run, not the ensemble. So as I play it forward, there they are, a pair of them. Big cutoff lows right there. Where's the jet? Way up north. So what these things are doing from now till Monday is they're just kind of lingering. This one's lingering over Indiana and Illinois. This one's lingering over California, Arizona. And I thought they were going to sag. I really did. I thought both of these were going to sag a bit farther to the south. And yesterday's model run, man, they were up north. They were sitting and spinning, and they had really changed the Midwest precipitation and the precipitation for the southern plains. But, each model run is going to treat them differently. And there they are. They just continue to waft and spin by Wednesday. I mean, look, from Monday to Wednesday, it barely moved here. And this one opens up. I'll show you the moisture for the southern plains out of that. But they're disconnected from the jet. So what ends up occurring here is that we find ourselves by May 8th and 9th into this pattern. I know you probably heard a lot of folks calling this like an omega block. We got to be careful with the word block. And I know I harp on these definitions, but I was a professor for 15 years. I think definitions are important. And to be honest, to be blocked up means you got to have the pattern stuck in a certain configuration for at least 10 days. We just have a pair of cutoff lows. There's the second of which that's moving through the southern plains about, a week from now. And what I want to know is, where does it go? Because as we get out there to May 11th, it's just sitting and spinning here. But look at the amplification of this trough. Now, this is going to really change the precipitation patterns. And I'm going to show them to you real quickly here. So, next 5 days, precipitation are my biggest challenge, because this is in my backyard, is figuring out where we're going to divide Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Missouri with who's wet and who's dry. All right. Here's 7 days. Here's day 4 through 10. Now that's when we're watching. Is this an open window in this area? I tweeted about it earlier in the week. I thought, hey, you get past May 3rd, we're going to open up some big windows in the Corn Belt while the south stays wet, while the south central plains stay wet, and the northeast stays wet. And then we look out there just the full 10 days and you get that. Now, I believe the farther that you go in this direction from that boundary I talked about, yes, wide open windows will be the name of the game. But it's not as though there's going to be no precipitation in this area. I just wanted to kind of highlight that, okay? All right, we're clicking through slides here. Next, severe weather continues to be a problem. There's a large area of enhanced risk from the Rio Grande all the way up to this part of the Ohio. And we're going to watch this carefully again today. It's that sagging front that's already in place there. That's today. Into tomorrow, it's a lot of the east, Appalachian Mountains, all the way to the Atlantic coastal plain, all the way up to the mid-Atlantic. That's where we're going to keep an eye out for some stronger storms. And here we are on day 3. Now to see this, I'm just going to play out the next 36 hours from the HRRR. And you can go do this on the website. It's just look at how widespread we're going to see some of these storms. Now, pretty heavy rain moving right over the Mississippi River here, kind of the mid-Mississippi Valley by midday today, this afternoon. That gets into Kentucky, Tennessee, but look where the boundary's just stalled and all of the intense convection that could follow along that boundary. We then play this out, and the front just continues to press east. This is the trouble. That wraparound precipitation right into this area, very poorly predicted even by Saturday. We knew it was going to rain, but I think the lingering effect of this first of multiple lows that are going to go through this area is evident in what you see here. Now also we have a front coming into the northwest as we work our way into Saturday. You can see the north-south trajectory of the showers going through parts of the Columbia Basin. But outside of that, we're going to clear things out in the midsection of the country temporarily. And I do mean temporarily. In fact, we should have the 12-0, and there it is. This is the new update for the WPC over the next 7 days. And you can see the effect of where those two lows are going to be, one that's here and one that's there. So if we just kind of watch where these lows are going to go, this one's going to bring its moisture into the northeast. This one's going to bring its moisture into the south. And we're talking about parts of Texas and Louisiana picking up, several inches of rain out of this. The maddening part is going to be where the edge is going to be here. Because we've made a claim, hey, we think we're going to get some open windows here. Some places are going to go pretty dry for the next 7 to 10 days, maybe even longer than that. But where that boundary is going to be is going to be frustrating. So I thought I'd add to this a couple of other model runs. So there's the WPC. That's the European model solution. 7 days out, European model solution. There's the artificial intelligence. And then here is the GFS. So if we just compare the GFS to the Euro, if I'm in Indiana, look at this. The GFS in Indianapolis, 0.63. The European model, 2.25. And we just continue to see that. The blend of models, honestly, it looks just like the WPC forecast. And I don't know that blending models is the right thing to do right now. Okay? I don't know which model to tell you to choose. You know which one I favor. I favor the European, but that's only because of a skill score. So what we need to understand is that this is going to be quite troubling for some folks. And I had a great tweet to me yesterday from a guy that's in Shelburne, Indiana. Now that's right about here, okay? Now he's going to be trapped into that eastern cutoff low. And this is the issue. If you could have seen his forecast from yesterday, I'm going to show it to you today, there's a huge difference. Now, his comment was, this spring has been long. Like, look how dry it was early. Then April comes in, and now they're sitting above average. In fact, he's having one of his wettest springs in the last 5 years. And if you look out there at the 10-day forecast, and where he lives, here it is now, Sunday into Monday, from the European, 3/4 of an inch. Because after that, nothing's coming through, according to the European. The GFS, okay, is bringing in 9/10 of an inch through the weekend. And then it's got another piece, heavy rain, coming out here by Friday, 1.62 inches. And the blend of models is just, all right, I don't even like it sometimes. But yesterday, if you could have seen this, these precipitation totals were considerably higher. The European was soaking the area. So I'm frustrated. And you can probably tell in my voice that it's a bit of a frustrating forecast to try to put together. And here's the reason why. Okay, as we get out there to Sunday, the position of this low, there's 1, there's 2. Can you see them? The position of the low in the European versus the GFS, and how they progress going from Sunday into Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday is what's challenging. Notice the European kicks us all the way over to, the eastern side of Pennsylvania by Tuesday night. The GFS is lingering here. Then there's the wave behind it. Now they've gotten a bit lopsided, but you can see the bigger wave behind it comes through. And if you could have seen yesterday's forecast, this one was much larger and just sitting and spinning in this area, bringing in much heavier rainfall all the way to the end of the week, but now they're starting to split. So when you look at the results of that pattern at the surface precipitation types, GFS left, European right, this is what you get. So this is Friday, today, into Saturday, Sunday. Let me just park it right there on Sunday morning. So again, I told you about the difficulty here. That's where the back edge of the rainfall is. Now we know it's going to be wet mid-Atlantic in the Northeast, but take a look at the European model versus where the GFS is. And for many that are in this region trying to get a crop planted, that is going to be a very frustrating forecast for when the rain shut off. So then we go out there farther into Sunday night and into Monday morning. See it sitting and spinning and lingering in Illinois and Indiana while the next deeper trough comes through, bringing in snow to the Rocky Mountains, rains along the parts of the high plains, and then that low takes over, opening up deep moisture from the Gulf into parts of the southern plains again. That's where all that heavy rain I mentioned coming into Texas, Oklahoma, then eventually into Arkansas and Louisiana is going to come from right there. Now, does that low bring this precipitation into the heart of the Corn Belt here? This is Wednesday, getting into Thursday. European, no. GFS, maybe. Friday. Look, this is where a guy in Indiana, it's like, dang, if you're GFS, hey, we're doing okay in European. I don't know. That's what happens when these lows cut themselves off. They're a mess to forecast. So you say, did the probabilities add any insight? Not really. I mean, here's all the way through Monday, the probability of getting an inch. See how sharp that boundary is? We then add to that next week. There's the next low. See it coming through the southern plains? We get out there, let's just go full 10 days. That's the probability of an inch. Now, I wonder if the new run is in. It is not. Good. I beat it this morning. There is your probability of 2 inches. Heaviest here, very heavy rains into the northeast. Probability of 4 inches. I mean, there's a 50 to 80% chance of 4 inches here. Very locally heavy rains in parts of Pennsylvania, New York, northern parts of New Jersey. Then you go to who's dry. I mean, Iowa, Minnesota, the Dakotas, Wisconsin. I think we're looking at wide open planting windows. But man, this is the tough line right there. Now, back west, this is not uncommon. We don't expect May to be a major precipitation producer. Drought in the parts of Mexico going to continue to build. And as we look out there even farther, I mean, this is what the 14-day forecast looks like in terms of precip anomalies. We're just kind of trying to put multiple views on this from multiple models. So that's a precip anomaly forecast through the next 2 weeks. That gets you out to May 16th. Now, what's happening around May 12th through the 16th? I still see something going on here, but broader ridging, and there's another cutoff low. And that's why the week 2 forecasts are keeping the southeast wet during that time frame. Okay? It's this guy right here. See it? But for many in the central U.S., we could especially as we get past this next 7 days, open things wide up. Open things wide up, whatever that means. So we're going to open up to get some work done here as we work our way toward the middle of the month. Now, does the pattern come back active at the end of the month? Matt talked a lot about this yesterday. I'm going to kind of use some of the same logic. We've got a very interesting thing going on with our momentum. We've lost it here and we've gained it there. Where are here and there? That's the subtropics. This is closer to the poles. So in between, we're watching for some shifts, but I'm just going to tell you right now, the global wind oscillation, which remember, if you get below this line, there's kind of lower total momentum and flow in the atmosphere. It means that we are dealing with a pattern that likes to cut off lows for the next, I don't know, a couple of weeks. But does it get its act back together once we get out there toward the middle and second half of May? And so to look at Dr. Victor Cassini's forecast during that time. All right, these next 2 weeks, looking at the GFS ensemble, week 1, week 2 for severe weather versus week 3. Maybe toward the end of this month, things start to crank up a little bit. Now, speaking of that, I want to show you quickly the 1-month outlook that was just released from NOAA. Now, this was their May outlook. And I'll look at this and go, yeah, of course, they're going to nail this statistically. But I will tell you that the front half of May will look much different from the second half of May, based off of how the momentum across the entire atmosphere is going to change. So why they're going to get this right is because of how the front half of May is going to shape up. It'll dominate the statistics. So does it look like anything else? Well, here's the European model for May. But watch what happens as I kind of move and include more of the end of May into the beginning of June. That's through June 8th. We see wetter in the southeast, drier risks may be coming back to parts of the plains. This is a 30-day outlook. And then you see much of the west on the drier side of average too. And what's going to be important about this is just to compare it to where our temperature pattern is going to evolve. So earlier I showed you the ranks for April and precip. Here they are for temperature. And we saw some moderation in this. And if we look at, again, that frost forecast for the next 7 days, again, just want to bring this back up one more time, and then show you here what the high temperatures are expected to do. So there's today's highs getting into tomorrow. This is now Sunday. Can you see our pair of lows? Warmth where the ridge is in between. So that's Sunday. Monday, they're just sitting there. Tuesday. Wednesday, that's going to be the tricky. Who's warm versus who's cool because of cloud cover? Definitely down here. The deep trough comes out. And that's next, that's Thursday. How often in May do you say that it's going to be warmer in eastern Montana than it's going to be in Amarillo or Midland, Odessa, or even down to Austin or San Antonio? That's incredible just to see the differences there. Broader picture, there's the matrix, right? We've looked at this. This was incredibly poorly forecast 10 to 15 days ago. We just still notice, though, the models go back warm, warm, warm. Why do they do that day 10 through 15? The jet is displaced north. That is the story there. So where are we going to take all of this? Well, let's go out there and just look at those analog years again. How well did the April analogs I chose match up with the ranks? Well, this is what we were expecting. This is what we got. Now, not quite as amplified, but there's a story there, right? Cooler, warmer. We were there. Cooler, warmer. Okay, some similarities. What about precipitation? That was the April analogs, and this is what actually happened. Some things match up really, really well, but no such thing as a perfect analog. So remember, I'm using these to go into May, and I'm going to tell you something. May is going to be a terrible forecast using analogs. This is what the May temperature forecast is looking like from my analog years. Cool northwest, hot southern plains. I don't know. I don't think it's going to look like this at all. Maybe the second half of May? I don't know. This is what we saw in precip. I definitely don't see this for the May stats, right? We expect that to be wet, starting off wet. But the reality is that while I don't think these analogs are going to get May right, I'm still concerned that they're going to be able to get this right. That's the precipitation composite map for June through August. Now, I am not convinced of all of this, but I am a bit more convinced of the dryness being here. And again, I've kind of made my case for why I think that is where this is going to go using these analog years. And then the temperature pattern, warmest in the central U.S. Cool west. Matt made a case for this yesterday. All right. Now, looking at all of these years again, I'm going to think about why. Why did I make that forecast? Why did I choose these? I chose these years because of when you look at the ocean temperature pattern for April of all of my years, they look something like what we've currently got. Okay, what do we currently have here? Little cooler here, very cool on our PMM, fading La Nina, large Pacific warm pool, but it's displaced because there's cooler water along kind of the coast of Japan and China. The Indian Ocean's not a dominant signal. This is a miss. And this drop off in temperatures here, it's about 2.5 degrees cooler than it was a year ago. That's a miss. But I show you all of that because, I'm going to go back here. This is what it looked like in those composite years. Very, very similar overall. And again, the story is by the time we get to June through August, I talked about this earlier in the week, we have to watch this area. So here's my failure mode. Let's say that the atmosphere does not lose its momentum during the time periods I'm concerned about. Again in June, again in mid to late July through August. If that doesn't happen, this does not go cold. And this, while it may maintain its cooler water, is not going to be a complementary thing to that. It's usually the trifecta of this, cold, cold, and cold, that tends to drive all of that heat where I'm concerned about it, and the high pressure and the dryness in the north central part of the United States. Right in the middle though. So I'm watching that. And this is so speculative, right? I don't know. But that's what I'm watching most carefully. Now, I mentioned at the beginning, I've thrown another year in there. What if we miss big time on this and we keep the negative PMM, that's the cold water here, but a lot of warmth moves in here in June and July, right? So instead of having the trifecta, 1, 2, 3, we've only got 2 of them. And 2021 was an example where that occurred. And we have to think about this because in 2021, what did it do? It did not put a ridge in Montana or Minnesota. Remember we talking about that? It put it more way over the west. But boy, did the jets stay displaced north. Excuse me. The Bermuda High was just hugging, parts of Nova Scotia. It wasn't full gone, but it was somewhere in there. Big ridge, though, between Iceland and Ireland and the British Isles. Now, this pattern, gave us this in summer. Extremely hot in the Northwest. Remember June of 2021? I remember it because we hit, 116, 118 degrees in Portland, Oregon. Very, very dry. And then if you look, we watched this dryness kind of bleed over into this area. And our ridge of high pressure sat somewhere in here. And the storms came over the top, and then this whole area just saw cascading storms. We were wet, very wet in June. So it's another example of a massive disparity in precipitation like we've experienced this spring showing up in summer. Now, is it a strong analog? No. But I'm going to show you these stats, and then I want to show you this. This is what happened globally June, July, and August of 2021. And what's interesting about this is how similar it looks to the current European model forecast for June, July, August 2025. What am I talking about? Okay, let's look at the U.S. Wetter risks here, drier there. Did we kind of see something like that? Yeah, wetter here, drier there. Let's pick out, let's go to Indonesia. Very wet there, but look at the South Pacific Convergence Zone here and then abruptly shut off right there. Now go look at this. Can you see it? Very wet, abruptly shut off there, but drier to the north. That's in the forecast. That's almost identical to what we saw. There was some dryness around the Black Sea into Russia. What are we currently forecasting? Some dryness around the Black Sea into Russia. India is forecast to have an active monsoon. Manchurian Plain, North China Plain wet. India had an interesting monsoon that year, but we didn't see major drought hitting the North China Plain or Manchurian Plain. And you can even see this in South America. Now, this is the heart of the dry season there, but might as well look at it because we kind of see, maybe it's the opposite signal. I'm not sure. So is it a perfect analog? No, but it's one I just need to consider. All right, one last thing to show you. This is the NDVI data for the whole planet. We're going to do this country by country, and rather than individual states or provinces. But I want to show you something here. I've masked this already for only showing NDVI over where we grow crops. So that's what's color shaded. All right, US, where are we right now? We're here. The red line, we're just a smidge above our average. Last year we had a higher NDVI. Let's take the US off. How about we just go over to Ukraine? Below where they were a year ago, still above the distribution. How about all of Russia? Remembering, this is only going to show you where they're growing crops, though. So like here is mainly the area. They're at the highest. Take that one off. What about China? Very high. India. High. South America, Brazil first. Now remember, only areas growing crops are shown. In Brazil, now the graph shifts, okay, so it's over here now. Highest NDVI since 2001. And that's just, something I wanted you to see. And from there, one last thing. The monsoonal rains are shutting down, which is normal. So for this to go over drier, it's right about on time. But heavy rains are expected in northern Argentina, Rio Grande do Sul, Uruguay. That has been an area that's been extremely dry for several weeks, and there's going to be some late, autumn rains coming into that region we need to pay attention to. All right, that is all I can think to tell you here on Friday. That was a lot, but these are the things that are floating through my head. I'll watch it all weekend. We'll talk Monday. Thanks.